Part we shall be discussing or knowing the fire protection requirement for different kind of occupancies. The minimum requirement for firefighting installation, that is the firefighting requirement for residential buildings, industrial buildings, are the following. Those occupancies must be fixed with the fire extinguishers, hose reels, dry risers, wet risers, downcomers, yard hydrants, automatic sprinkler systems, manually operated electrical fire alarm systems, automatic detection and alarm system, underground static water storage tank, terrace tanks, pumps near the tanks, and the terrace tank pumps. These are explained in the oncoming slides, which is elaborately clarified in the NBC 2005 Part 4, Table 23. In this slide, what we see is a schematic diagram. Here we are seeing the major items which we had seen or discussed in the previous slides for the firefighting installation of different occupancies. This is an schematic diagram only, which is explaining the systems generally for the sprinkler systems and hydrant systems and the manually alarm systems and the automatic detection systems. It is provided with the storage tanks, and these are the pumps and the major accessories required for the systems. These systems, what we see over here, that is a zonal sprinkler annunciation panel. This is required for the automatic fire alarm system and manual alarm systems. And these are generally taken care by the electrical engineer. A firefighting engineer has to take care of the sprinklers and the hydrant systems and its necessary components requirement. These are actually the legend which you can see and understand. This part of it we have also discussed in the lectures, as well as we can understand from here also. Those are explaining the components with the legend marks. What we see over here, these are the panel for the automatic alarm systems, and these are the panel, annunciation panel for flow switches and other things. These are the zone control valve, as we have seen in the details. These are required to monitor the areas where the sprinkler system is in operation, and the signals are taken from the flow switches, which are part of the zone control valves. However, some things which I have explained over here are not being properly understood. It can be contacted for further clarifications. This will be requiring a thorough understanding and knowing of the requirement explained in the table 23 of the NBC part 4. Here is the printer reproduced from the table 23, which is explaining the type of fire protection systems or the requirement to protect a different kind of occupancy. The major components are explained over here as we have discussed in our previous slides, and the requirement. Those are the fire extinguishers, hose reels, dry risers. These things are explained further by the sub notes, and these notes are explained in the last part of the table 23 with the remarks and details against these notes. Wet risers, downcomers, yard hydrants, automatic sprinkler system, manually operated electric fire alarm systems, automatic detection and the alarm systems, underground static water storage tanks, terrace tanks. What we see from here, there are certain notation written over here. R is standing for the required, NR for not required. These remarks or these notations are against the subdivision of the occupancies. Like we have a residential buildings group A. These are subgrouped with this remarks: lodging and rooming houses in category, this is A1, A2. Likewise, if the buildings are having these characteristics, these things will be applied over here. Here, for example, you can see that 1 or 2 family private dwellings, which is A2 category, these items, what explained over here, extinguishers, hose reels, etc., etc., R and R means these are not required for this type of buildings or this type of occupancies. Further we go with the next slide, then you will see that some of the areas, the subcategories of these groups, some items are required, some are not required. And to comply with the code requirement or the NBC requirement, we have to follow these guidelines. Further details as explained and continuing in the oncoming slides. The sub-notes and the notes written against any remark are duly explained at the end of these tables. So as I have already mentioned, that the designer has to fully understand and work along with the requirement of these notes wherever these are mentioned. This will make the design easier and compatible with the requirement of this code. Similarly, further slides are The further slides are explaining the different kind of occupancies. Like this is the educational buildings, institutional buildings, assembly buildings, and so on. All the groups which have been discussed earlier are detailed for its fire requirement in the subgroup of those building occupancies. And we are seeing these examples like business buildings. These are the subgroup categories and these are the requirement. Mercantile buildings, group F, storage building, group H, and what we see over here. These are the explanatory notes which we had seen are marked as and when those are required to be seen or taken care according to those sub-notes. And these are the notes which are actually required to be complied with to complete the design. Here this slide, what we see over here is for the purpose of sizing the risers for the hydrants. These were discussed earlier also in brief in our previous parts where we were discussing the hydrant requirement. Here further we are rediscussing those things and we are trying to explain that under what conditions, what kind of hydrant and what kind of riser size is to be provided. These are actually not in the line of those subcategories which have been explained in the table 23 of the occupancies. These are detailed in different manners and the brief clarifications are mentioned over here. Here what we see that these are the areas or these are the occupancies as per this kind of a category will be requiring a 100 millimeter single outlet landing valve. Landing valve is the valve where the hydrants are coupled and used by the fire brigade or trained firefighters. So as we can see the example, the residential buildings category A, lodging room, dormitories, 1 or 2 family which having height not more than 15 meter and above, maximum to the 45 meter, and with the shopping area not exceeding 500 meter. This is and less than 15 meter, and the hotels not more than this. Although these categories or these groups or these occupancies are further explained here, but these are having the different characteristic. For example, once we see a hotel over here and the other occupancies here also, those are varying according to the height of the buildings and the requirement for the single hydrant or the double hydrants will be varying accordingly. See, all buildings classified under 2 and 3 above 30 meters. Classified under 2 and 3, these are the buildings. So building up to this height will require a 4-inch dia or 100 dia with a single hydrant, but the same building occupancies more than this height will require 150 dia hydrant, risers and double hydrant. This is required to be followed to complete our design and the sizing of the hydrants. So we go further with that. This slide is explaining for the building not exceeding more than 30-meter height and above 15 meter. What you see over here, these are not having a storage tank like other larger occupancies. It is having a overhead tank with the pump to boost the pressure, and this is a dry risers installed which can be fed by the fire department, and it can be pressurized by the water inside the tank. These things are duly explained with the notes wherever this kind of systems are applicable. And this is the